In rotation 4, player positioning is as follows. The opposite in zone 1, followed by the H2, the M1, the setter, the H1, and the M2. The libero replaces the back row middle blocker. The setter is now a front row player, which means there are only 2 front row attackers, the H2 and the M1. With the opposite now moving into the back row, it's not unusual to see a defensive specialist come into the match to replace the opposite and play in the back row for the next 3 rotations. But throughout the remainder of these videos, we'll continue to call this player the opposite, whether it's the original opposite or a defensive specialist. In serve-receive, rotation 4 traditionally has the H2 move back into zone 5 and pass. The setter stays in zone 4 along the left sideline. The middle attacker lines up just behind the setter. The H2 will hit a go, and the middle now has more offensive route options because there is no front row opposite, so the middle can hit a gap or a quick, or hit a slide. In men's volleyball, gaps and quicks are more common, with a back row player hitting a D. In women's volleyball, a slide is more common, with a back row player potentially hitting a pipe. And the setter is now a front row player, which means that setter dumps are now legal. There isn't much to worry about here with overlap rules. The setter needs to be to the left of the M1, and the M1 needs to be to the left of the H2. Looking at the back row players, the opposite needs to be to the right of the libero. Here is what this looks like. If you don't want the front row outside hitter to pass in serve-receive and would rather have the opposite or defensive specialist pass, the H2 could move over and up to the attack starting spot. The H1 and libero would shift over to the left, and the opposite steps forward to become a third passer. The overlap rules here are once again very simple. The setter needs to be to the left of the M1, and the M1 needs to be to the left of the H2. Here is what this formation looks like. If you want the H2 passing instead of the H1, this is an easy adjustment to make. The H2 comes back to pass in zone 5, the H1 steps back to the end line. The overlap rules here remain the same with the 3 front row players, but with one new area of concern. The H2 must be in front of the opposite. Here's how it looks. In the next video, we'll look at rotation 5.